I'm Leon Todd for G66. Welcome to another Tuesday Tone Tip. I hope you're all fantastic. Today we're on the FM3 and I want to talk about my absolute favorite effects block, the multi-tap delay, and a few little interesting things you can do with it. Before we do that though, I have the Band Commander model set up at stock settings, except for the bright switch, which I've turned on. I'm using my LT TV Mix 2 cabinet IR and the JFET compressor. This is what it sounds like on the neck pickup at the moment. Really nice and squishy from that compressor right there. So let's go right ahead and add a multi-tap delay block. I'm going to connect it in parallel. That's my preference. If you want to know more about parallel effects routing, go and watch my Tuesday Tone Tip on that very topic. So let's do this. Let's select a parallel block down here. I'm going to right click in FM3 Edit and come down to multi-tap delay. So as it loads up at stock settings, we want to do a few things straight away. Let's turn the mix up to 100%. I'm going to bring the level down just a little bit. And for any adjustments in the effect level, I'm going to use the level control rather than the mix. If I had connected it in series on the grid here, I would use the mix instead. The bypass mode is mute effects in, and at the stock settings, this is what it sounds like. So we have 4 delay taps in this quad tap delay mode, each with their own delay time, feedback level, and panning. There's also filters on each of them and the ability to add chorus to each of those delay taps there. So the first thing I like to set up with this particular quad tap delay is a dual delay with chorus. So it's basically filling the spot of 2 blocks. I don't need 2 delay blocks, or I don't need the dual delay in the delay block, and I don't need an extra chorus. So first thing I'm going to do, let's just turn the levels down on these 2 delays here, and I'm going to set the tempo to none. I'm also going to set the times to really short delay times. We're going to come back to this in just a second. So they are off at the moment. Let's set up a dual delay. I've got my first delay as a quarter note delay. I'll set up the second one as a dotted 1/8 note delay, and I'm going to set the feedback on the second delay to 0%. The way this particular effect type is structured means that this is kind of my master delay tap over here, and I'm going to set the feedback on this one to 20%. I'll set the panning left and right, and check this out, it's a beautiful dual delay. Very nice stuff indeed. The first couple of things I would do though is really kind of fine tune the echoes. So I'm going to go to the master section. I'm going to set the low cut to 80 Hertz and the high cut to about 4000 Hertz because I like darker sounding delays. Let's have a listen to that. That is perfect for what I like. Okay, let's do this. Let's go to the chorus section. And for delay taps 3 and 4, I'm going to add a pair of choruses. Let's do one at 0.7 Hertz and one at, I don't know, say 1 Hertz. Why not? And I'll set the depth at about 30% for this one and the depth at about 20%. For this one, let's go now to delays 3 and 4 and turn their respective levels up. What I'm going to have now is, if I also set the feedback to 0 on these, let's go and have a listen to this. I'm now going to have chorus plus my dual delay. This is like magic. That's fantastic. And furthermore, I have so much control over the chorus voicing because I can adjust the individual delay times there. For example, if I wanted more of an analog style chorus, I could use longer delay times, say in the range of 20 to 30 milliseconds. Fantastic, right? There's also a bunch of extra controls in there. My favorite being the diffusion controls. So I'm going to turn the diffusion time down to about 10% and the diffusion mix up to about 20%. What this is going to do is kind of smear out the repeats on the echoes, give them like a kind of faux reverb character. So now I've basically got a dual delay and a chorus and something kind of reverby. This is almost replacing 3 or 4 blocks now. Hear how those delays, as they degrade, they kind of get washed out. It's really, really lovely. Let's hear that with some dirt now. I've got the Atomica High model with a boost engaged. That's just god tier lead tone for me, and that's more or less how I use the multi-tap delay in my main live preset. There are several other modes in this multi-tap delay though. For example, we can use the quad parallel delay if we don't want our, say, 2 delay lines here to interact via feedback. In this case, I could just independently set the amount of feedback on this line right here, which again, I really like as well. My main rhythmic delay that I use live, I set up with the quad parallel delay. Let's go back to this clean amp channel over here. So let's have a listen to this. It's subtly different to the way I set up the dual delay before. Let's experiment with a few other effect types in this block. The quad tape delay is the one to go for if you want those kind of like space echo or multi-head echo style effects. Again, stock settings, I've just turned the level down a little bit. We have 4 delay taps. Think of these like individual delay heads, and we get this. One thing I would do here is scale all the feedback controls to compensate for the different echo times. So the shortest echo here is this 8th note. So let's set that, say, to be, I don't know, 40%. And I'll make my quarter note feedback half of that value. And then I can make my dotted 8th note like 75% of that value. And then I can make the dotted quarter note, let's set that to 15%. Hopefully this all works out. We can then attach a controller to the motor speed here. You heard at the end of that example, I just twisted it. I could use something like an expression pedal to get those old tape slowdown effects. One thing I really like though is going to the controller section and selecting a random LFO. Let's set the rate to about 2 Hertz. I'm going to attach that to the motor speed, but I'm going to set the minimum and maximum times to quite a small range in there. So let's go LFO 1A. I'm going to set the minimum to about 0.97, and the max of just a little bit more than 1. I'll also just tweak the attack and the release so that everything is nice and smooth. This is just going to give me some random modulation on these echoes. I've also gone to the master section and turned the master feedback down. It was really fun having that kind of almost get into self-oscillation mode before, but now that I've set my main delay taps or heads, if you want to think about it like that, I can then just use the master feedback to tweak everything. And it's almost like a tape machine that's not operating very reliably. I could make these even finer and, push them into the like 995s and 0.005 or something like that if I can get close enough. And it's going to sound a little bit smoother and kind of less glitchy or wobbly, but maybe you want it to sound glitchy and wobbly. That's the quad tape delay. I'm going to talk about one more effect type in here, maybe two more, but the diffuser is a really interesting mode in here. If you just load it up at the stock settings, you might think to yourself, what am I ever going to use this for? But try this, take the master time control and set it as low as 5%. What we have now is something that kind of sounds like a reverb. Alternatively, I could set that really low, like 1%. Pretty subtle there, or take it up, say, to 10%. This is kind of going to be like a bigger room. So if your preset is already stacked and you don't quite have room to add a reverb, consider using the diffuser in the multi-tap delay. I really like that. And it almost kind of sounds like an early digital reverb or something like that. It's explicitly not super hi-fi. It's a little bit lo-fi, it's a little bit metallic, it's got character, which I always like. The last one we should talk about is this quad tap band delay. When you just fire it up, you kind of go, well, it just sounds like the quad tap delay. Like, why is there a separate thing in here for the band delay? I mean, the quad tap had frequency and Q controls. I believe the kind of filters, they're either not in the feedback loop or they are. They're probably in the feedback loop on this one as opposed to not being in. Or I might have that the wrong way around. Read the manual, Leon, that's what I should do. But what you want to do is go in and turn this Q control up. Try it at around 2 to start with. You can see I've got a bit of low cut and high cut already. Check this out. It's like having an auto wah on only your delay repeats. So there's so much more we can do with this. For example, in the quad parallel delay, I could set up everything to be a chorus, again with really short delay times on all 4 voices. Let's just throw a couple more of these in just as an example. And I can go to my chorus section, I can add in some more depth to those. There's a comb filter section in here. There's ring modulators I can put on the delay taps. I really like this comb feedback control here. I'm almost kind of creating a quad Cora flange or something like that. And I can even set the amount of feedback. For example, if I go like 50% here and let's go minus 50% here, I can change the phase, which is really fun. And we'll do similar amount, 50% here and minus 50 over here. This is This is really, really cool. This is one of my favorite flange tones. With these little sparkly diffuse echoes going off in the background as well. So there's so much to explore in the multi-tap delay block. I have several videos on this block over on my YouTube channel. You can find me on there as Leon Todd. If you want to know more about this block and you would like me to explore it even further, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time.